Well, thanks so much. We're back on another episode of the Future Proof podcast, where we have a chance to talk with business owners about where they've been, where they are, where they're going, and how they help the people that they serve. Today, I have with me Jake Schoch, who is the owner of Assisted Living Locators here in the greater Cleveland area. Jake, good morning. How are you?
Morning, Brian. I appreciate you having me on today.
Jake, and I wanted to clarify, is there a more accurate way that I should have said that in terms of, your assisted living locators territory that you're
No,
serving?
yeah, I think you announced it pretty well. So, but I would normally call it Assisted Living Locators of West Cleveland.
Cleveland.
The reason why is there's an individual on the east side, and then there's also an individual that owns their own territory in Akron. So that helps us differentiate ourselves a little bit.
And one of the reasons that I'd reached out to you and wanted to feature you as a guest here is I do have some history, as we've discussed, with this community of elder care professionals, right? And the time that I'd spent in that space really was eye opening for me. That something as simple as having a business meeting, but it's at an assisted living facility, for example. You might find yourself walking the hallways and passing by rooms with residents. You know what I mean? The people who are the end users, living there with assistants. And whether it's those individuals and how their lives have evolved, and obviously this community of business owners that serve them, not to be cliched, but it is that sort of it takes a village sense of things, right? That you've got a community. I remember hearing probably 10 years ago somebody talking about the baby boomer generation, right? And the fact that that's an audience that is aging into this time of life where a percentage of people, commonly need care and stuff like that. So all that to say, I really do admire individuals like yourself that have planted their flag in serving a community that needs somebody with steady hands and strong guidance. And I want to give you the floor just to talk about what attracted you to doing this. And I guess high level, what I know what you guys do, but for anybody listening, how do you describe what you guys do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, high level. So, assisted living locators of West Cleveland. Myself, I'm the owner and I'm the senior living advisor. So, a senior living advisor, what I do for my company is I provide free services for seniors or their families when it comes to placing them into the appropriate assisted living, memory care, or independent living community. And that's all based on their medical needs and their medical background. Now, that's what we do, but that's not who all we network with as well. So there's a lot more to offer than just the placement side of things. For me, I take the name advisor or the title advisor very seriously. Being in groups that allow me to network with individuals that are also small business owners in the space that can also support the individuals that I work with. So my end goal ultimately is to keep an individual in their home or wherever they would want to be as long as possible. That's ultimately, what we're thinking. That's top of mind when we first start the conversation is what is your goal for your family member, or in this case, or another case would be a senior directly. If their goal is to stay home, I'm going to try as hard as we possibly can to provide them the resources to stay home. That could be, for instance, introducing them to a trusted home care company or a trusted home health care company that I could provide an introduction to, where they can then stay home. And then if later on they need to transition into a higher level of care, into assisted living or memory care, then I can support with that as well. I can also support with introductions with different elder care attorneys or estate planners, someone that can help them out with how to handle their finances. So there's a lot of different ways that we could help people within our area, and that's the most important part of it. That's a big reason why I got into this business. not only has, my mother been an RN for the last 40 years, so I've been in and around the healthcare space for all my life essentially. Um, it's about giving back and helping people. And when I wanted to, being born and raised in Cleveland, having moved out for 10 years and finally moving back to, finally set some roots and to really give back to my hometown and my community. And I wanted to be able to find a business or start a business where yes, I can, keep the lights on in my home and I can pay for groceries and everything. But what else could I also do to give back to the community that I'm so thankful for? And this allows me not only to provide a free service for these individuals, but I can also help out with the individuals that are not as financially fortunate when it comes to these housing situations where they might need government resources or finances to support the type of care that they need. Not everyone helps out those folks for some reason, and it's disheartening. So to be able to provide resources and to be able to support those folks through their decisions was a huge reason why I wanted to start this business, join the assisted living locators franchise, and really start to build something here on the west side of Cleveland.
Yeah, no, thank you. That there's a couple things that I wanted to touch on from what you said. One from a consumer perspective, because I think it's really important. The word free, right, came up as far as going that the families that you serve are not sent a bill from you. Is that fair to say?
That is correct. So I have relationships with the majority of the communities that are around Cleveland, and that allows me to have an unbiased opinion, and that they will compensate me for different placements into their communities. Now, that allows me to provide all my advice and all my services to these individuals and build that relationship without ever having to send them an invoice, which I find is I couldn't find a better business plan there, and that's another reason why I fell in love with this because I'm helping these individuals that are in a stressful time of their life. Hopefully they're being proactive about it, but a lot of the times, unfortunately, it's a reactive moment. And if someone has a fall or ends up in the hospital and they need to find the right level of care or community moving forward. I know the last thing that they want to do is or see is a bill in the mail for the advising that they received.
Well, it
So
puts
it's
them in
it's
a spot
something
again
that's really important to me.
of being continuing to be vulnerable. What you just said there again was another thing that I wanted to address. So I'm going to single it out that people avoid this planning for this stage, and that one of the things I remember from talking to companies that put in like ramps and lifts and grab bars or do in-home care or like anybody in that community, the most common story, okay, is usually that somebody was living independently until they had a slip and fall, and then the severity of that now compromises activities of daily living. And people don't necessarily anticipate that the home they're living in is going to be their forever home in terms of aging in place concerns, right? Right now where I sit, there my laundry is downstairs. You know what I mean? My bedroom is upstairs, and when we bought this house when we were still in our 20s, you know what I'm saying? We had talked about moving out before our kids graduated from high school. Guess what? We're still here and they're both about to graduate. You know what I mean? One's already gone, the other one's graduating this year. We already did an upgrade. We might, my point is again, I ran into that a lot that whether it comes to issues like estate planning or something like having a handrail next to the shower, or certainly having a plan in mind for, or even a broad understanding. The other thing that was that really fascinating to me, I mean, we're touching on areas that are kind of, people don't like thinking about them because they're sad and scary. You know what I mean? This other side to it, though, that is kind of interesting that I also want to talk about is maybe that it's not, there's stigma associated with assisted living that I think is also worth moving away from. That the idea of these cold, facilities. You know what I'm saying? That I've been to places that felt very alive and vibrant as well. That there are people that I've been to communities that have these like phases of levels of care where there's some people who are still taking shuttle buses to the Playhouse District, and really have kind of an active, thriving community life. And that assisted living facility, that's one of the things they're assisting with is going, yeah, no, we're not dead yet. You know what I mean? Like, and really, again, versus people that have progressed in terms of their level of care or need, a lot of times on the same grounds that have one type of level of care, you'll see the memory care unit. I mean, tell me more about how those options have evolved and changed over the years.
Yeah, I mean that's a great topic. So when it comes to, there is a difference between nursing homes and assisted living communities, and there's a big stigma that most people associate all of those with just a nursing home. So for a nursing home, you're going there for skilled nursing, for some one of the highest levels of care that you can get. When it comes to a rehab center or a long-term care facility like that. So when it comes to nursing homes, they're a little bit more. It's all. It looks more like an institution. It looks more like a professional medical building. They're going to have a lot more nurses, a lot more aides running around there. You're going to hear a lot more of what would make it seem like more of a hospital, from what you're used to. And that's what we can call, I think people use the word facility sometimes. That would be more so what we would describe as a facility. With assisted living, I those are communities. With assisted living allows you to be as independent as you possibly want to be. It's going to have a home-like setting. It's going to have dining areas that you have all access to, activity areas, socializing patios and outdoor areas. You can come and go as you please. Your family can come and go as you please. Your loved ones can come and eat with you whenever you want in the open dining halls if you don't want to eat in your room. And it's just all about creating the sense of community within assisted living. And a lot of people, I've had more than one individual that I've placed in assisted living describe it as like it's going back to college. And I think one of the biggest reasons is that there's over 10,000 people turning 65 every day. It's the largest generation that we've seen. So having knowing that, people are starting to, once they actually get their foot in the door in an actual community, they see it doesn't look like a hospital. They see that there's not, you know, nurses and aides running around, trying to get to the next person because there's so many folks in there. It's all about, making yourself comfortable. You have the support that you need throughout the day, whether that be, something as simple as getting in and out of bed, or support with your showers, or having a companion walk down the hall with you while you're going to the dining area to make sure that you're okay. And then it can increase into higher levels of care too, if that's needed. If there is wound care or oxygen involved, there are communities that do support those higher levels of care that you might need in a skilled nursing facility, but you could also get an assisted living community and be a little bit more comfortable in that sense as well. So I think you hit the nail on the head. It's a broad distinction between the two of them, and they are commonly referred to as the same a lot of the times, which is not correct.
Love it. I love it. And to tie those threads together, this idea that says somebody wasn't, to whatever degree they thought they could ever possibly need help like that, many people, most even at the point that they're pursuing it, are doing so in a reactive rather than proactive fashion, right? And there's a lot of moving parts that can go along with that. That depending on what situation led them there, they're dealing with physical therapists and again issues like estate planning, level of um in-home care, medical assistance, non-medical assistance, all of that stuff, the activities of daily living stuff. How's it impacted? Where, I like, you hear terms in the doctor world of like bedside manner. You know what I mean? And that idea to me always struck me as someone who can come in and be calm and professional and have the answers and have just that steady hands, calm demeanor at a moment where people are freaking out. Right, and you've got that vibe. It's interesting again to look at a franchise operation. And even there, it's another spot where people hear the word franchise and I feel like they think of fast food. They think of McDonald's and, Starbucks and food is, and there's a big wide world of franchises, and even that is a thing that as I've aged and been more involved in different types of businesses, you come to understand there's like a franchise for everything, right? But I bring that up in part to say that as a business professional, no one would really objectively look at that niche and go, aha, a get rich quick scheme. You know what I mean? Like, and even as it relates to franchise models where they use terms like turnkey, um, McDonald's has some of that vibe in terms of saying, yeah, you spend the money, you put the thing up with the golden arches, and everybody who drives by knows what that means, and they pull in and they know what to expect and all of that stuff. You have to go out and build relationships and really plug yourself into that community in a very real way, and there are no shortcuts to it. And so I've met you through the networking worlds where you are out there putting in the hours, in person, building relationships, whether it is with trades professionals, attorneys and estate planning professionals, and you name it, so that you can sort of have this amazing, Rolodex, keyring, whatever metaphor you want to use, and it's not about kickbacks, right? That you talked about. Part of that business model, in terms of your relationship with the assisted living facilities is one thing, but when you're you taking the time to build a network of local professionals, that's not about revenue. That's about providing value. And certainly things like the Alzheimer's walk, tell me more about that group and your involvement in that, and why you singled out that cause as well.
Yeah, that's a really important one for me. I actually, when I first launched this business last year, that was one of the first things that I was able to really start to take advantage of and lean into, because that would, the world of dementia is a scary one, and it's one that a lot of the folks that I work with are battling with every day. So identifying that need, right off the bat, and then being able to grow my relationship with the folks with the Alzheimer's Association has been imperative to, to my growth and my educational growth, for that terrible disease, and how I can help, make someone more comfortable that's living with that, or make the family more comfortable that's living with a loved one that has it. So for me, the Alzheimer's Association, it really started with leaning into the Alzheimer's walk, and every major city has their own. Cleveland has one, but it's also there's ones out in further out in the western suburbs or the eastern suburbs. But the one specifically for Cleveland, last year was hosted at the Cleveland Zoo. And this was the biggest year that Cleveland's ever had. We raised over $850,000. There was more than 4,000 walkers there. It was just a great environment for people were supporting strangers that they'd never met before, because they're all, associated with this terrible disease in some way or form. And I was fortunate enough to be able to have a booth there and actually sponsor the event, and chat with people the entire time about their different experiences. There were a lot of really sad stories, but a lot of support that came out of it as well. A lot of success stories that came out of that, and how people have handled the different situations in the past. So that really made me want to dive even deeper into it. And there's an individual named Polly that's a part of the association that reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to be a committee member, and everything just kept progressing. And so now I'm a committee member, and now I'm trying to build more teams, and the more teams equals more donations, but it also means more awareness. It all goes back into the awareness and the research and development of that terrible disease. So this year, the walk again is in October. and that's we're likely going to have to change venues. Surprisingly, we outgrew the Cleveland Zoo. So we're going to likely have to find a new location for later in October. But please, anyone, I'm sure Brian will share my contact information. If you're ever looking, really to get into the volunteer side of the Alzheimer's Association, there's so many different ways that you can be involved, and I'd be happy to share that with you as well.
Yeah, we can put, contact information in the show notes and description stuff, but even just to say it out loud, what are some ways for people to find you
Sure.
and interact with you directly? Where do you want to be found, I should say?
Yeah, absolutely. So you could call me at 216-815-3131. You could email me at Jake S, so Jakes at assistedlivinglocators.com. You could Google me, assisted living locators West Cleveland, and all that. So you'll be able to find me. I'm also on LinkedIn. My name is again is Jake, but my last name is Schoch, spelled Schoch. I'd be a very poor man if I said I could get a penny for every time someone would say my last name correctly. So that's why I wanted ahead and make sure that that I actually spelled it out for you all. But yeah, that's how you can get a hold of me.
I like it. There's this notion of running towards discomfort that comes up in the world of like coaching and business. And when I think of that term, it usually has some excitement to it, right? Like it's this thing of going like that's where you'll find real growth, is when you move towards the things that challenge you and that you're afraid of, right? It doesn't sound it's still true in the world of planning for aging, but it's just like, boy, it's a tough subject, you know what I mean? But I really do like what you're talking about in terms of being like, yeah, it's just about increasing awareness. It's like, yes, you need it. It's critically important that people kind of rip the band-aid off one way or another around these topics because they're coming. You know what I mean? Like they're coming for I don't know that you probably have more statistics, you know what I'm saying, than I do. But even on a gut level, it's like, obviously we're all going to be aging. You and I were both present at I saw an estate planning, or no, it was the life insurance presentation recently. But there was a statistic in there where Jay Braun, who we both know, was talking about something like, what was it, like 70-80% of people will like need some form of long-term care, but less than 5% will have planned for it in time to need it. I mean, I might be slightly off on those numbers, but it was something along those lines where it was like, yeah, like 3% of people will have adequately planned for what to do and how to pay for it and all the rest. And so I again, I really appreciate that in a world full of options for a young professional who has decades left to contribute to the world and the business community. I really do appreciate and respect that that was an area that you chose, Jake. So thank
Thank
you.
you, Brian.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
One
Thank
thing
you.
I want to touch on before we wrap up, is that for anybody that I talk to, as I mentioned in my introduction, even there's this idea of where you've been, where you are, where you're going. I like the idea when it comes to goal setting, and having a program like this to talk about goals and that we could revisit them, right? I'm not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. So I like the idea that we could talk about, I'll use that Babe Ruth, story where he would call his shots. He'd be like, I'm going to hit the home run right there. And then he'd do it. I like the idea of hearing you or anybody call their shot like that. And then knowing that we're not going anywhere. Let's revisit this in a year or whatever period of time and be able to go like, tell me how that's going. So whether it's the 1 year goal, the 5 year goal, tell me about some goals that you have for where this ship is headed. Where are you trying to go?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this business is everything to me. No wife, no children. This is my baby. So this is the most important thing for me in my life. Aside from my parents and my faith and everything, but um, you know, this for me, I have specific revenue goals. I have specific placement goals. I'd like to keep those discreet. So, the big one is, aside from my volunteer work, I have a number of placements that I want to place for free, and not meaning for free on the senior side, because that's always going to be for free. But when it comes to placing individuals that need to utilize the Medicaid waiver, individuals like myself don't get paid on that, so they shy away from those individuals to support them. I want to lean more into those individuals because I feel like those are the people that need the most help. So when I have the time, when I set aside the time specifically for those individuals, that's really important to me. So having a specific percentage of all my placements that I have for my year, the goal that I have, there's 15% of that at least needs to be pro bono for me, just because I need to give back to the community that I grew up in. It's very important to me. A specific goal that I can give you that I feel comfortable sharing on is that I want to have 3 new hires within this year. So far it's just myself, and I've been the owner operator the entire time, but it's going to get to the point where I want to continue building my relationships within the community. So I'll need to take on some staff to help support some of the things that I'm doing in the office, so I can be, boots on the ground out in the field more often. So I'll say three new hires in the year of 2026. I want that done on by December 31st of 2026. How about that?
Love that. And just to elaborate a little bit more, can you describe what are these three people going to be doing on your behalf?
So I'm gonna have to. So one of the first ones, and I likely already have this employee in mind, but it's my mother, who's been the RN for 40 plus years here in Cleveland. But I need somebody to support with tours. So someone that can represent me after I've met these individuals in person. We've had numerous conversations in person, and we finally decided what would be the best fit for them. After we decide the best 3 or 4 communities, I'll set up those tours and then have someone on my behalf represent me, because those tours, yeah, they are absolutely important, and the right questions need to be asked. But I can train my mother to do that at a very high level, and she would excel at it. Or not just my mother, but any other individual that has a nursing, social work, or a background similar to that as well. That to me is the most time consuming part of things, because sometimes tours on the final days before you're moving in can take up to 3 hours, and that's 3 hours of my time where I can be helping another individual. So I want to make sure that I can help out as many people as possible. Another individual that I'll need to hire is admin, so someone to keep track of the different tours that we're scheduling, all the different appointments that we have to set in order to get in front of these individuals. That's going to really help take a big responsibility off my hands, so I can be in front of the community more often, and continue to grow relationships that way.
Awesome. Well, I love it. Well,
Yeah.
I look forward to, next time we're talking on here, we'd have the opportunity where you could tell me the names of those people and how they've been working,
Sure.
out for you. And as with everything, it's like you get to the top of the mountain only to realize there's another peak to climb. You know what I mean? And so that's part of the fun part with goals, is that you achieve them only to set new ones and keep going. So I
Yeah.
it's been a pleasure to have you in my network and get to know you better. And I like watching the journey, and getting to contribute where I can. So I appreciate you taking some time to share what you do and your vision and your goals with our audience. Thanks for your time today, Jake.
Awesome. Thanks, Brian. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah.